Hi guys, welcome to Science Lesson 6.4a. So Science section 6.4 is talking about groups of elements. So elements are really fun to study. Remember that elements, that is basically the smallest thing that can still be that specific type of thing. So each element has its own unique number of protons. If you change the number of protons in an atom, you change the element that you have. So we are going to talk about different groups of elements we have and how we can classify them in today's lesson. So the periodic table of the elements is what is used to classify and to group together elements. But how did it come about? Well, around the time of the American Civil War, there are about 65 known elements. 65 elements that have been discovered, have been given names. People figured out, what they were. Scientists could see clearly that certain elements were similar to others. They had characteristics that made them very much like other elements. Dmitry Mendeleev, a Russian chemist, was the first scientist to successfully group the elements into families. This was around the time of the 1860s, 1870s, that he developed his process of grouping together the elements that he knew were in existence. And he wanted to, because he noticed things about their atomic weights, how different materials, different elements had similarities based on their atomic weights. And so he kind of started grouping them in order of their atomic weights and came up with the periodic table of the elements. This is his early version of the periodic table. If you guys have seen the periodic table, which most of you should have by now, you've seen the periodic table, you know that it looks a lot different than this, but this is the primary work. This is one of his first periodic tables that he put together of the elements, organizing them based on their atomic weight, based on their atomic number. The numbers that you see right there, those are part of their atomic weight. This is the current periodic table of the elements, the table that is used right now. So you can see on this table, the gray square at the top shows you the key to this table. You have your number, so that would be the number of protons, which, by the way, matches the number of electrons, so that it evens out. The symbol, the name of the element, and then the atomic mass. The atomic mass. So remember, the mass is how much matter is in there. Okay? So the very first element is hydrogen. It has one proton, one electron. The helium atom is next over here. Now it's all the way over here because it's in a different group. If you look down here at this key, you see that there are a bunch of different groups. We can divide them into three main groups, which would be nonmetals, metals, and semimetals or metalloids. Both of those have the same meaning. So nonmetals, metalloids, which would be semimetals, and metals. So the three basic groups would be anything, so I'm going to draw a line right here. These things are all, once I get around here, sorry guys, bear with me. These, I believe, is how it's divided. Okay, these are all of your non-metals, excuse me. These over here on this side of the squiggly line I just drew are all of your metals, including these elements right here. You can see that they pop out and pop down here. Okay, these are all metals. Then these right here, and I'm drawing my line inside of them, these are considered semi-metals. And then these here, outside of the semi-metals, sorry if this is a little confusing, these are considered non-metals. Okay? They're gases and other types of things. So those are the three basic categories, would be metals, non-metals, and metalloids or semi-metals. Your book will use the term semi-metals. Now, something interesting to note is that since your book was written, there have been elements that have received names. When your book was written, For example, the element 118, the last one to so far be discovered, is the name un octium. And your book talks about how that just means 118 and in Latin, and how it would eventually get a different name. Well, since your book was written, it has received a different name. It is now Onganesium. Oganeson. There we go. So that is now the name of what used to be un octium. It's now Onganeson, and it has the symbol OG. So so there's a few things that have been updated since your book has been printed. So that's pretty cool to see science in the making. Also, you'll see in your periodic table in your book that elements 113, this one right here, 115, and 117 aren't even in there. There's no element there. They have since been discovered later. And remember, these are man-made elements. They're elements that have been fused together, the atoms, by man later on. All right, so let's talk about the metals. We're going to talk about each of the groups of elements, the metals, the nonmetals, and the semi-metals. Today, we're just going to talk about the metals. So let's talk about some characteristics of metals. First of all, metals have typically a lustrous silvery color, with the exception of reddish-brown copper and yellowish gold. So you see here, on far left, that's the copper, so it has kind of a brownish reddish color. And then over here you have gold, which is yellow, but most metals are this silver color. So this is copper, gold, and this is actually the element silver right here. Most metals are solid at room temperature. Room temperature would be like the normal temperature that it is outside, with the exception of mercury. That is always a liquid, and that's the liquid that you see right there in the picture. That would be mercury. That is a liquid metal. There are other metals which melt very easily. For example, if you were to hold cesium in your hand, it would melt like chocolate, as well as the metal gallium. But you would not put those in your hand because they're very toxic. They would be harmful to your skin, as is mercury. You have to be very careful around mercury. But those are liquids mercury is liquid at room temperature, and these other two would melt if you were to put it in your hand. So if it receives any more heat than room temperature, they would go ahead and melt. Metals are also good conductors of electricity, so they're used in things like light bulbs and such because they can pass the electricity from one point to the other. They are also good conductors of heat, so they are used to heat things up. You see there the eye of a stove. It's red because it's glowing with the heat that it is conducting. So if you've ever noticed when you want to take a pan out of the oven and you go to reach in and grab it, it's very, very hot and it burns you, right? If you were to touch it without any kind of like oven mitt, because it transmits heat very, very well. So they're good conductors of heat. Let's talk about some important metals. First one is chromium. So you guys know some of the obvious metals like gold, platinum, silver, iron, copper, aluminum. We studied those back in chapter 3, which would have been last school year, so some of you weren't even in this class. Those are important metals, but here's some other ones. So chromium is a very shiny metal. You can see that there. It's often applied to polished steel to prevent it from rusting. So it's used on cars, car bumpers. That's why we might call the car bumper your chrome, because it has that shiny metal put over it. So one, it'll shine, and two, it won't rust. Zinc. That's used to coat steel, and when it coats steel, so that coating means you put it over top, it forms galvanized steel. Galvanized steel is basically even stronger, and it's used in items like chain link fences, trash cans, roofing nails, car bodies, all of those things. Zinc is also an ingredient in the batteries of flashlights. Nickel is a very hard metal used in stainless steel, rechargeable batteries, and lining of tanks for corrosive chemicals. Corrosive chemicals means chemicals that will eat away at other things if it touches them. So nickel lines those tanks so that the chemical won't eat at the tank as much. And then there's lead. Lead is the densest of everyday metals. So your normal metals that don't have to be made in a laboratory, lead is the densest, meaning it has the most mass packed into it. It's mainly used in car and truck batteries. It's actually highly dangerous to humans. It used to be used in lead pencils, so like in your pencils. I mean, that's why we call it pencil lead, because it used to be lead. Now we use graphite instead of lead because we've discovered that lead can actually be poisonous. It seeps in through your skin and poisons your blood. A long, long time ago, women used to use lead in their makeup. And so they were putting it on their faces every day, and it would seep into their skin, and it poisoned their blood and caused them to get sick. So once scientists discovered that, they took lead out of things and changed everything up. But so lead used to be used in a lot of stuff. Now it's not used very much at all, just mostly in things that people aren't going to be touching and working with. All right, let's finish up this lesson with some review questions. Number 1, who constructed the periodic table of the elements? That was Dmitri Mendeleev. Number 2, what are the 3 main groups of elements? Metals, nonmetals, and metalloids or semimetals, whichever one you chose to say would be correct. Number 3, what is the only metal that is a liquid at room temperature? Mercury, excellent. And number 4, which metal is an important ingredient in stainless steel and rechargeable batteries? Nickel, excellent. And our last question, number 5, what is the densest of everyday metals? Lead, very good. All right, let's talk about your homework for today. You need to read pages 292 to 294. It's not very much today. You need to complete Science Quiz 22. And that's it for your homework. So make sure you do a very good job on that. Also, don't forget you have no English homework today because of your movie with Miss Haley. If you have already seen that by the time you're watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you have not seen it yet when you're watching this video, again, I hope you enjoy it. It's a great story for you to know. He's a great guy to learn from. All right, have a wonderful day, guys. Love you very much. Bye.